Today we've been lucky enough to meet Stephen Loftus as he shares his unique career journey from selling booze in the early days to becoming CEO of global fitness brand Wattbike. He discusses the challenges faced during his tenure, particularly post-COVID, and the importance of team culture and relationships in navigating these challenges whilst catering to various markets from elite sport to home fitness. He highlights the future growth potential of the brand through technological integration and the benefits of their recent acquisition by Interactive Strength. Finally, Stephen shares insights on the importance of fitness in an ageing population and offers advice to the next generation regarding career paths and the use of technology. I hope you enjoy. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Delighted to be here, Steve. Thanks for asking.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, exciting day, because one of my big hobbies is cycling. So, Steve is chief exec of Wattbike, and he's been there for a couple of years now and had, obviously we'll use loads of puns, quite an interesting journey already with some really good news and lots of change, again, right in time to record this podcast. So, Stephen, if it's all right, we always like to start these podcasts by going back in time and you giving a bit of history of how you've got to be chief exec of Wattbike, because I know the background and it's quite an interesting one, but I'll let you share that with our listeners.
Yeah, well, I'll do my best. It's quite well, I'm quite old now, so it's kind of long, meandering journey to my kind of role at Wattbike, which I've been CEO for the last 2 years. So, yeah, I've kind of gone from booze to bikes to, well, still on bikes, into kind of the best fitness bike in the world in terms of Wattbike. So that's kind of the headline of my journey. But I started out, didn't quite know what I was going to do, but, as most people, kind of as a student, and I studied geography. So it was all the human and social geography around the world. And it kind of made me want to go into international business. I didn't quite know which business to start. But as a student, it was a natural transition to go straight into a booze company, because that was seemed like a fun place to go. So I went into a company that's now called Diageo. So that was the biggest spirits company in the world. And I had an unusual beginning. I got picked up as a free grad by someone who became a big mentor for me in definitely my first half of my career, Richard Brown, who was running the international strategy and planning team, which basically meant they helped the big brands and the big markets develop their strategies and plans for the future. So quite an interesting place to start, and very lucky. My first induction at work was going on a distillery tour of Scotland. So yes, it was a very, very fun place to start.
What a terrible thing to start your career, eh? Doing that. Oh, how did you cope?
Definitely thought I started out well. And I kind of really... Then I remained in the drinks industry until 10 or so years ago, and kind of moved, and actually Richard set up a new consultancy firm about 3 years later, and I was one of their first employees. And basically for the next period of my career, I was working as a consultant, mostly for the drinks industry, doing the similar things Richard did with his senior team at Diageo, which was helping companies develop their global brand strategy or their go-to-market strategy for selling their products in particular markets. And I loved it. I found it, I was very lucky to be exposed and to kind of all these discussions around long-term planning, but felt a bit toothless because, Richard and Michael and Neville, who were the founding partners, they'd all done it in business. And I was advising people in my 20s and never had actually done anything. I just was suggesting things to do. So I decided that I'd see if I can go join on the other side, and kind of a bit of a theme in my career. I kind of thought I might be able to try and do something myself, and I pissed off to Chile and went with a mad business plan idea and ended up persuading someone in Chile to help me develop that. Actually, it was a chap who ran Interbrand in Chile, but he was working for the big wineries out there. And through that conversation, we developed a business plan. I came back to the UK and shopped it around to whoever I could get to speak to. And so bit of a theme here in my career. It's all these little conversations that kind of opened up opportunities. I then met um, an amazing guy who's no longer with us, sadly, but he ran Red Bull in the UK, a guy called Harry Dinnock, who was a bit of a legend in the drinks business. And I took through an old university friend who worked for him. I took my idea to him, and he didn't like my idea, but he thought I might be able to, I'd be mad enough to help him on a project that he was working on. He was working on the Thai owner of Red Bull's wine business, Kunchalam Uvitia, which was a Thai wine business, so very much pioneering future area potential. And I had an amazing 3.5, 4 years under Harry at Red Bull, working at Kunchalam, trying to replicate. We weren't quite to the same level, but replicate what Karen Billamoria did with Cobra Beer. So create a product which was associated with the food, Thai
Yeah.
wine for spicy food, basically, and also convert a spritzer, which was very successful in Thailand, into a proposition for Europe and European customers. So I did that, loved it under the tutelage of Harry. It was a mad time. I kind of understood, and well, I didn't understand, but I learned the differences working with Thais versus with Brits, and how you've got to kind of adapt your style a bit and try and understand how they do business. And went on that adventure, and then it came to an end because I had an opportunity at the biggest wine company in the world through an old client from when I was working as a consultant. And I went to a company called Constellation. That was the biggest wine company in the world that had been built through acquisition. And I started doing the marketing job in Europe, and then I was innovation director for 6 years. And that was the kind of most creative period of my career, where I was very lucky to be in a big business where I could spend time thinking of new ideas and trying to bring them to market. And
So time wise, that was the early 2000s, was it? Or I think you were
that
there,
would have
wasn't it?
been
Mid-
around, it was just on, yeah, it was just 2005, six, and just before the kind of recession hit. And
but a very exciting time for that product in terms of wine, wasn't it? With what was going on and how people's
yeah,
minds were being
wine had
opened
become
up.
really, really popular.
Yeah.
And, we were working with the big retailers, and it was recession time, so it was a tough period where I think those, like all these big corporates, we went through rounds and rounds of cost cutting because of everyone's trying to become more efficient in tough times. But actually, it was quite, you had to work really hard, and resources were reduced. But it was fun, and it was a great culture, and I had a lot of, had a really good time in that period. And I learned about working across different parts of the business, because doing new product, you have to work the legal team, the finance team, the
Yeah.
ops team, not just the commercial team, the sales team and marketing team. So it, for me, was a good exposure to the total business. I kind of, some of the products stuck, but it also told you how difficult it is to create a new product and make it successful. Most fail. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's very low percentage
Yeah.
successful. And I, at that point, came to a point where I thought I'd get into a smaller business, and decided I wanted to move away from corporate back into earlier stage businesses where you can have more involvement and cross it, and maybe kind of move up a bit more in seniority in the company. And my first step was into a fun entrepreneurial spirits company called Quintessential Brands, that recently was formed, acquiring other businesses. And I had a brilliant year there working as marketing director, but I was always commuting in London when I lived in London on two wheels. And I'd hit 40, and I'd become a mammal and was cycled to Paris and all those kind of stereotypes. And I happened to, in my village, the chairman of Brompton Bicycle, a guy called Tim Guinness, who was at university with the founder, Andrew Ritchie, of Brompton Bicycle, and was one of his first backers. He persuaded me. He said, well, why don't you go and have a chat with Will Butler Adams, who has taken over running the firm from Andrew. You guys will get on, and I know he's looking for a sales and marketing director. And I didn't follow up at the beginning, but then every time I commuted into London, I was bloody surrounded by Bromptons. It was like every day. And
There was a calling you couldn't
I had a
exist
moment on
resist.
Waterloo Bridge when I thought, gee, this is such a cool product. Something I believe in. Why don't I just have a chat? So I kind of popped over to Kew Bridge and met Will. And Will's a big character, very magnetic, and he's creating a real success at Brompton. And he was looking for a commercial sales and marketing director. And before I knew it, I was doing an interview and somehow kind of persuaded Will and the team that I could be a fit. And that was about 10 or so years ago. And then I had, an amazing 7 or 8 years, I can't remember the number, at Brompton until 2 years ago, where, the business went on continued to go on this incredible journey. And I was kind of lucky to be part of building the team and pre-pandemic, we'd grown a lot, and in the pandemic it grew more. So that kind of moved from booze to bikes, and I'm still a shareholder of Brompton, and I've got my Brompton in my car every time I'm going up or traveling around towns, London, whatever. I'm always on my bike, and yes, and so kind of the business went from about 27 million to 110, 120 in that time, and we were lucky in the business is based off a wonderful product. And big team at Brompton developed it, continued to develop it during that time, and I came to a natural crossroads where it was the right time for me to go back and look at a smaller business.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, who do I speak to? And I thought, well, I'd met 10 years earlier someone called Chris Curry at Piper Private Equity, and I'd taken him an idea when I was just on the cusp of leaving Constellation, that I took an idea about a new low alcohol beer brand to him, and he gave me a bit of advice about things in general. And I thought he's a really generous guy, gave me something, advice that really stuck with me. So I thought I'd go and have a chat with him, because Piper invests in small brand-led entrepreneurial businesses. And it just happened that at that point in time, there was an opportunity within their portfolio at Wattbike, and he wanted to see if it might be a fit for me.
Because they invested in Wattbike, I think 2020, didn't they?
2020, and them and the team had a real tough period post-COVID. And, there was a point where there was going to be a transition, and would I be interested in getting part of that? And Rich, the outgoing CEO, would stay on as an advisor, for a period of time to help me settle in. And yeah, I knew it was going to be, having been in the bike industry in COVID and all the challenges, as well as some of the highs, I knew it was going to be quite a tough period to navigate out of. But I thought it's an incredible product that's got a great reputation in elite and across international markets. And whatever the challenges around COVID, I bet it's got a really talented, passionate team, and you couldn't have created that brand if you hadn't. And what a challenge to see if you can help the team navigate out of that period of time, and at the same time also lovely life experience. So not a bad time to try and get a bit fitter and do that. So
I've got this vision of you all in the boardroom, all on the Wattbike when you're planning the future of the business as part of that.
we should, but we don't quite do that. But actually, everyone at Piper and obviously our team, you do fall into it, pretty quickly. So that's my long meandering journey to my current position at Wattbike, all through connections and conversations that kind of tip into the next one.
I think it's a really good answer, Stephen, because it's really interesting. I've been lucky enough to meet lots of people now on this, and you're sort of epitomising what are the themes that are coming out. It's like always meet someone. There's always an opportunity. It might not be now, like you say, you met the Piper guy a few years ago, and suddenly you reconnect. And I think it's about understanding that there are opportunities to take if you feel like them. Obviously, you sound like you're a bit of a glutton for punishment going into smaller growing businesses because they have a very different footprint and way of operating, don't they, than larger, more established ones. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that you need a different sort of psyche and approach for those, don't you?
I think, and a different skill set and tolerance to different types of stresses and challenges. I mean, it's interesting. You realize, I think, in a smaller business, how much the team, the energy, the belief, how much impact that has. It's not all about how bright you are and even
Yeah,
what experience you've got. I was amazed, I think Will did a great job at Brompton, how many people he developed from really young ages to run parts of the business. And it was about kind of core energy and talent, not necessarily about what's on your CV. And from
yeah,
a corporate world, you're a bit over influenced by CVs and experiences, but actually in a small company, you kind of all work together and be committed. It's, there's nowhere to hide in a small business. I think in a big business, you can be just in your little bit of it, and it doesn't
I
have
think
something like that.
yeah, it's a really interesting lesson because you're right that there's no right or wrong with each set of business. You either, like, to your point, once something I love building businesses, and once it's become once it works, I lose a bit of interest in it. I want to go off and do, right, what's the next thing, what's the next challenge. And like you say, because my skills are an operational, running it every day, but they are like, there's an opportunity, roll our sleeves up, get that team in. I think that even that people realizing there are those types of jobs, never
Well,
mind titles, and it's just even
and where
the
you fit, in
yeah,
that piece. Because what happened, going back to the Chris Curry conversation, he made me realize I wasn't going to be an out and out entrepreneur. So his insight he gave me was he was kind of implying, are you prepared to kind of put your house on the line and spend 3 years and
yeah,
you understand the chance of success? And are you going to do the from scratch? And what I got from that is I realized I'm actually that I like the bit of put it once someone's established, the first idea is putting
yeah,
some structure in, but I still love the chaos of a small business, but I like putting
yeah.
structure and process around it. But then when it gets to lots of people, more corporate, I think my value starts to diminish
Yeah.
so you kind of, I think as you go through
You're a transformer, nearly, aren't you, of the business from, like you say, chaos to control, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
And then when you get too much control, when it goes into you have to in a corporate, when you kind of, I remember at Brompton, there were 5 chiefs, and then suddenly there were 12 directors because it's a much bigger business. You can't have your hand in every area, and it's not
No.
appropriate to. And so if you like to have your hand in every area, you're probably, it's not the stage that you're
Yeah,
actually.
you're going to get very frustrated, aren't you,
Yeah.
if you're
So
honest?
it's interesting. I find that you know I, you find where your position is along that spectrum. And I'm kind of in the kind of SME world, not startup, but that kind of.
I've got you. You're the scaffolder, putting
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
structure.
that's it. Yeah.
So, in terms of arriving at Wattbike in 2 years ago, you obviously do like a challenge because if you look at what was going on, you'd come off the peak of COVID where everybody was stuck at home. Yeah, and I've already admitted to you, Steve, that we were the Henry family invested in a Wattbike in the COVID period. You've then got Brexit really started to kick in and cause you problems, I'm assuming, and then there was that little Ukraine war that's still going on. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
starts
yeah,
to
it's a cost of
bring
living.
in.
Yeah.
So you thought that's a proper challenge. So when you walked in, how did you begin to work out where the priorities lay for you as a leader of that business?
Uh, I had to look at where the issues were and think about, well, which are the ones where I feel I could help the team focus on to find a path out of it. But finally, one of the earliest ones, because it's my first CEO gig, and I've been part of a growing team at Brompton, but I wasn't the CEO. So my commercial team went from like 15 to nearly 200. But it's very different when you're the CEO because you've got to have a real relationship and a touch point across the business. So I felt, for me, I had to develop into that, but also how important it would be the culture and the team. So I did go to that first. And one of the challenges is the Wattbike was still working 1 day a week in the office.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been commuting from a long way, and I felt, how do we bring people back in together to work as a team? Because clearly the team had been hugely successful in the past, and it's quite hard with all the change and transition to work effectively if you're only seeing each other 1 day a week. And so I, I, I started to measure how people were feeling in the company.
Mm-hmm.
We now do a quarterly staff survey that captures NPS,
MPS, yeah.
staff net promoter score, and how you feeling we're doing on communication, and all those about 12 questions. But I also kind of said, look, come on, let's come back in together as a team. We structured the office a bit more differently, so it's more suitable for people working, and just pushed us to be there at least 3 days a week. And
Yeah.
so I thought team was the most important thing to get
Did you
sorted.
get? It's interesting, Steve, because it's very big in our industry in the advertising world at the moment. Did you get a lot of pushback on that, or
I
because
think there was a
you're an
lot of,
innovative product, aren't you? You are constantly evolving that product.
a little bit, but it was easy to address because you could say, well, it doesn't mean you have to be religious about exactly what time you're in the office, but it's actually better. You're going to find it better to be in the office in terms of doing the work and relationships. No, and it probably would have happened anyway. I just kind of prioritized it, maybe so it was a bit quicker. And I think the fact we were tracking how people feel
Yeah,
and didn't hide from the answers to those questions and did it a bit repetitive, but we did it regularly. That helped. And the second thing was we had to rebuild relationships with our main supplier, which was Giant's subsidiary, a company called AIPS. And the COVID had created disruption in that relationship. So, I knew we needed to develop new product, which the team knew what they wanted, but it hadn't been approved with the supplier. But we needed to kind of reset that relationship and ensure that we're doing what we needed with our partner there to enable us to then ask for quicker development of new product. Because with that better relationship, we could then bring out the new product, and we've done, as a result of that focus, we've got 4 new bikes out in the last 8 months. Most of it's just evolution of our Watt bikes that we already had,
yeah.
but enhancing them, and then hopefully we'll be able to do more on the digital proposition as well. So, yeah, so staff, supplier, and the bringing, as a result of that, new product to market.
Yeah, and I suppose that it might be worth just a minute to explain to people how your range differs, because at the end of the day, people might think, well, it's a static training bike. How could they be so different? But you serve some quite different markets, don't you, in terms of the elite sport side? And
Yeah, I mean, at a market level, Wattbike is amazing in terms of how many different people will use a Wattbike to improve their health and performance. So we started in elite sport, and we're in every Premiership football team, rugby team, national teams, NBA, NFL, around the world. But we're also in other B2B sectors, such as one of our biggest customers is the British Army, but we're in the Navy SEALs. You name probably the most elite military units. We're in them around the world. We've done 1 million health tests, benchmark fitness tests, and recovery from injury programs for Bupa and other Nuffield, other health providers. We're in schools and universities, and we're in nearly 4,000 gyms around the world, 3,000 in the UK. So if you went to a Virgin or David Lloyd, you'll find some Watt bikes on their floor, and hopefully
so quite a nice wide audience to try and
yes.
keep happy.
And then since 2017, we've been selling, particularly for the road cyclists, the Watt bike Atom to the home.
Yeah.
So we've got home customers. So we've got multiple channels, but then in terms of product, we've got two major platforms. We've got our air bikes, which are the original air bikes which were developed for elite sports and have gone in particularly into healthcare and other B2B sectors, which are highly accurate, amazing ride feel. You can adapt very quickly to stop start riding. So it's very good for high intensity workouts. It's manual in terms of you change the resistance on it, but they're kind of bulletproof, to take off, take the power of a 20 stone rugby player, just knocking it out, trying to hit a high intensity power test, let's say our 6 second test or whatever the, 1K challenge. And it's particularly used for high intensity workouts, but also measurement of your performance on power or whatever program we might have. And then we have our smart bikes, and the first smart bike is our Atom, where it's got it can connect to other external worlds such as Zwift or other indoor cycling platforms, where you can go and live the experience of outside and within your home, and also have smart gearing system. If you like, it's the difference between a manual and an automatic, where on our Atom, our smart bike, and now our Proton, it will adjust to you in terms of the cadence and gear systems that the bike provides. It will adjust to what you put in and what you might be facing if you're on a kind of virtual kind of ride where you're having hills and stuff. So yeah, we've got different sales channels, but also we've got these two different product platforms, Air and Smart, and they kind of address different customer types.
Yeah, so that's really good. So you've recently been acquired or about to join, aren't you, a bigger group, which is interesting of how you continue that journey of innovation, especially because we spoke earlier about how the tech side of these bikes or the digital aspect of them, once the hardware's there, are the bit that keeps people locked into these things, because they're built, aren't they? They're built to last as a piece of kit. It's quite an investment for people. So
yeah, no, and our training app, the Hub app, is the kind of magic sauce in the what bike experience, because that's where you do all your benchmark tests to know where you are on the journey to improve your health or performance, but also all of our workouts and training programs that we've developed with the insight from elite sport, the healthcare, all these fitness providers. That's that's where you kind of reach that Wattbike experience. It's a free app, so you don't get charged for it. And our soon to be new owners, Interactive Strength, were pre-pandemic a startup that's now NASDAQ listed, which is got their first product form, their interactive fitness mirror, is very much try to leverage the technology to bring the coaching and the training programs to you at home in an engaging way. And they're acquiring businesses to build a portfolio of products where we can offer the best of connected fitness to different sales channels. And they're also just about to acquire a company called Sports Tech in Germany. And I'm very excited about, apart from having teams in the US and Germany that we don't have today, I'm particularly excited about their tech capability, both in the US, and actually the Sports Tech business has a team in India, where we can help enhance the Wattbike digital experience, our training platform, because what we've got is something which is got so much depth to capability and science, in terms of we've got all the firepower in terms of helping take anyone on whatever goal they might have, which could be recovering from injury or just getting fitter and healthier to play with your grandchildren or competing to win an Olympic medal. And what we need to do is to make that platform more accessible to more people, and adapt and personalize the training programs so it's even more tailored to Steve or Wendy or whoever the Wattbiker might be. And I think Interactive Strength's tech capability is a real unlock for Wattbike. It kind of makes us more accessible to more people.
Brilliant. And it'll allow you to keep your be in your happy place as more growth happens and more
Yes,
variety.
yeah, well, exactly. If we can do that, everyone's always got a smile on their face.
Yeah. So in terms of that connected fitness, and is because obviously people are probably aware of Peloton, that was much more sort of class based, as in it was a piece
Yes.
of kit, but it was about trying to share with us. Does the acquisition help with that, or is it still pretty much no? It's Steve's plan, but we've got a lot more tech to measure and to reward and
I,
build.
I think Peloton, you know, has done an amazing job of bringing fitness to more people, and they've done it in a marketing-led, content-rich way.
Yeah.
And I think we can look at Peloton and we can take good insight that can help understand how we can make our Wattbike platform more accessible to more people.
Yeah.
There will always be a difference, I think, for Wattbike in terms of we say we're for the intrinsically motivated. So people further along that journey in terms of fitness. It doesn't mean we can't get people who might have very different levels of fitness, but we feel we want to give people the tools to enable them to measure and increase whatever their pathway or whatever their goal might be, whether it's, as I say, losing weight, recovering from injury, improving their mental health, or winning a gold medal. I think we will be doing it in a way, though, which is assuming they want to go on that journey,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and
You're not trying to convince
we
them.
won't
You
be
just
shouting at them to get on the
yeah.
bike, because we want to keep it a bit simpler
Yeah.
and more performance led in terms of the outcomes, and we will want it to be measured. And so I don't think we'll stretch quite as far into the broader market in the same way that Peloton do, but we will definitely take insight from how well they engage with their community
Yes.
and encourage people along the journey.
Yeah, because it's interesting, isn't it, of that balance of feeling like you're part of a movement, but not necessarily all having to go out together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
The belonging, because it's quite a private thing, isn't it? A lot of people's fitness journey, and like
Totally.
you say, there are on that scale there are so many different things people are trying to achieve. They want to share some things, but maybe not all the gory details, and
No,
keep
no,
it
no.
quite personal.
So and that's just part of our customer journey, because clearly, we're not just selling to the home, we're selling across all these different channels. And probably the most important platform for growth is us to get more watt bikes and more gyms around the world.
Yeah,
I mean, that is the best way for people to try and fall in love with watt bike, both in terms of practicality, in terms of getting exposure, but also from a financial perspective. It's a very, very expensive model to build a direct to consumer business
yeah,
on a very expensive product. And Peloton kind of have done well, but I think the fact that they've struggled to make a profit indicate if you're only doing direct to consumer in this category that we're in, it's a question mark on whether it could be profitable. I mean, definitely my appeal was to Wattbike was having that omni-channel approach, and Brompton was very much built off partnerships with retailers as well as developing direct to consumer. So I'm a real believer that you're going to have multiple channels and
yeah.
balance. And yeah, so we won't be replicating a direct to consumer only model.
Yeah, I think as well, there are obviously trends and fashions that come and go very quickly now. With the exposure of social media, you've got to be careful you don't build a business on the trend. You build it on something that is stable, which is
Yes.
fitness. And fitness should only become more important as, never mind we get older, but as the whole world gets older.
Yeah, you imagine.
That if you've
And
got a
one of
product,
the big bits, we have a benchmark, benchmarking and tests are a critical reason why we've been so successful in Elite or the British Army. We put the AAA test in so they could test all of their recruits and not have to do running as a test, which could create injuries on knees and other areas. And I think one of the central things we need to do is show how our benchmark fitness testing is relevant to everyone. And
yeah,
anyone goes into a gym, that everyone should get on their Watt bike and have a benchmark fitness test where you can do a CRF cardiovascular test where you can see where you are on your lungs and heart and where you fit within your percentile in your age group
Yeah.
to enable you to then have a target to improve yourself on that journey. So I think one of the technology hopefully will help us bring that benchmark fitness testing to the surface more, so everyone can do that. But I think the emergence of smartwatches were already measuring things that we didn't measure 5 years
Yeah.
ago. So maybe Wattbike is kind of reaching a point where our technology is suddenly, the world is catching up with some of the kind of data that we can provide. Suddenly it's going mainstream.
And you feed that in with everything
Yeah.
else, and you've got an
Yeah.
amazing picture. Yeah. So it's I can see why you took that job now, Stephen. That's definitely, you realise what there is in there in terms of development, isn't it? Because that's what's fascinating. And so, are there will Wattbike go into any other products than Wattbike, or is it more about that's the platform and it's how we enhance it and engage it to be better?
Yeah, it always a maybe. And you got to think, well, how does our technology and measurement, what other areas could we go into that we're not
Yeah.
going into today? So I think it's definitely a possibility. The greater challenge is how do we replicate what we've done in the UK, which is whatever it is now, 65 million size population,
Yeah.
markets where we've hardly penetrated at all, whether it's North America, US, China, Japan, Middle East,
Yeah.
Europe. I think the much greater opportunity is enhancing the proposition that we've got, the Wattbike, and how do we find ways of reaching those people outside the UK? That's the
Yeah.
bigger prize, I think, than
I'm
saying,
going to say, with a list of those as markets, you've not reached that saturation yet, have
no,
you? So
no.
you haven't got to worry
And
about that.
all of those markets we've established in elite sport. So we've got that
So it's how
foundation.
you wash down now
And
into.
now how do we, with our interactive strength new owners, how do we reach into the the health clubs, the gyms around the world, and how do we then, off the back of that, develop the direct to home?
Are you working at all with like NHS and people like that, where you can help them
Yeah,
get our nation fitter? Full stop. Yeah, to
very much
help
so.
take
I
the
mean, those
pressure off.
healthcare providers, I mentioned, the Nuffield and Bupa, their tests of measuring health and fitness, or even injuries, let's say, through our unique tests that we've got on the Wattbike. We can measure where you might have injuries in your leg or hip and help them on the recovery. But yeah, the benchmark fitness tests already are used.
Yeah.
And yeah, as through that, it's into the NHS as well.
So there's a way, isn't it, like you say, of starting potentially with elite sport, and then where you can navigate
Yeah.
your way through to getting
And,
into people's homes.
and schools, we're in schools around the world. In fact, I was visiting in Hong Kong earlier in the year. We were in about 40 primary schools in Hong Kong where our Atomex and esports come together as part of a PE class, where they obviously don't have much space, and they can put 14 and 15, half a class on watt bikes, and they can have lots of fun, but they also can measure the fitness and health of their
Brilliant.
kids. So yeah, esports and bikes, in schools as part of helping measure and improving fitness of children, not just adults, is something we should be continuing to push.
Yeah, and a nice line of Olympic gold medalists to herald the brand, isn't it?
Adam, the team was saying on the stand yesterday that our most successful, I think one of our most successful Olympics, Laura Trott, she was identified on a watt bike ID test.
Really?
Yeah, so yeah, you never know where so many people would have started out, and
Yeah,
we don't
it's just you've
realize.
probably got to ask, haven't you? And you go, oh yeah, I used to go in every week on them. Yeah,
Mm.
so that's brilliant. So you said this was your first chief exec actual role, although you'd done lots of elements of it from a marketing background originally, wasn't it? It was your core development and then into a more operational role with Brompton. So how have you found that transition? Obviously, you talked about how you approached kicking off at Wattbike. How would you sort of describe your leadership now that you've settled in and you've worked out where the wins are and where the challenges are?
I think I made the right call to focus on the team and culture first, and that was from my kind of, you know, just observation of what went on at Brompton. So I think I'd always repeat that. Um, how to then build the team out, and you know, I'm still learning, and I think you ever finished learning. And my character is my character, and as much as I tried to contain some of the more annoying factors, I'm sure um, they will always be there. I think getting the feedback loop in very honestly through that quarterly survey, and also what we did at Brompton, which I encourage because I've done it in my previous company. I do I don't know if you've heard of stop, start, continue.
Yeah,
The way of
yeah.
getting short, sharp feedback across the team for your team, but also yourself. I think I will always need to be doing that kind of stuff. One, encouraging the team to get 360 feedback on things they should stop, start, and continue, but also for myself because you got to, if you're a quite driven personality, I'm quite like that and like to get things done quite quickly, maybe too quickly. You've got to put in place those feedback loops to try and to contain yourself and make sure other people have an opportunity to have their voice heard. Because so I
I
think
think,
I just need to continue to keep working working on that.
but I
Uh,
think it's very honest with you, Steve, because it's easy to sit at the top and fire, you know, directives down to everybody. But if they see you reacting to a similar sort of management style you're asking them to behave to as well, then it makes it a really very open culture, doesn't it? Where people go, no, no, this is how we do it. We're very honest, but it's for the good of ourselves and the company. So you have a
yeah,
collective aim, then, don't you? Rather than it's just not me being told, I don't. You're not doing that very well, Steve.
yeah, and I'm not. I've got no poker face, so I'm not very good at keeping secrets at the best of times. So my approach when I came in to Wattbike, because it was a very tough situation, I took a very transparent approach, and I took the risk and said I told all the staff every month where we were as a company, what the risks were. Pete, my CFO, you could see the P&L, you could see the cash position, because I felt there's too much ingrained commitment to Wattbike in the company, particularly some people that have been there, that I felt they would get more out of us being transparent than the risk that it might spook people, because I think small companies like Wattbike and Brompton, there's people are bloody resilient, but you
Yeah.
just need to trust them a bit more. So I took a very open approach and shared stuff maybe that other companies might, CEOs might not want to share, but I think that kind of culture is particularly appropriate for small companies that they've got
It,
this
it's
brand,
in
they've got product that people have come to because they believe not just in getting a job, they believe in the product.
and they've got nearly a vocational input into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. It's something we changed a lot throughout COVID, where we felt. I think we were extremely humbled by our teams and how well they worked. And suddenly everybody's at home and they're more effective than they ever were in the office for a time. And so we always felt, me and my business partner always felt, well, we have to be totally transparent now, and we tell them when it's good and we tell them when it's bad. And what we found is that they then took a collective responsibility to
Yes.
when it was tough to make it better. But you do. Part of you inside goes, oh no, that's my job to worry about this sort of thing. I don't want to put that onto people. But then you realise actually people want it and they know where they stand. And then it's back
Yeah.
to your 360 bit, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I think we had different ownership with our private equity owners. Piper came in. I think because of that, and then everyone was working from home, I think there was a bit of an us and them. And that kind of, then people don't know who's accountable and who's responsible for stuff. So it was a bit like, well, Piper did this or Piper said that. And I kind of felt, actually, no, it's us. You know, so uh, we're the ones driving it, and if we make mistakes, we just have to put our hand up, or if it doesn't work, that we've tried everything we can, but it's not. I think part of it was to empower people to realize that they are responsible and accountable, and we are responsible and you know,
Equally as accountable, yeah.
providing the money to the business. They've got every right to kind of come in and ask difficult questions. But if it doesn't work out, if it was our plan, then we just have to kind of acknowledge it and try and adapt. But I
Yeah.
think that was the other bit about being transparent, is saying, look, it's down to us, it's no one else. And it's not, the task is tough, but it's not impossible. If we work well together, yeah,
The
but I,
power of a cause. It's good, isn't it?
yeah, so I think passing on that responsibility and not trying to have it just yourself is something I thought, I didn't know if it was going to work, but I definitely now feel it does work.
Yeah. No, no. I think it is, I think it's becoming more and more prevalent in business. It's gone are the days of the Alan Sugar pointing it and saying you're fired. That's just not business nowadays, is it? It's about a collective force that can be brought from the good of people. So you've talked quite a bit about you've had some key mentors throughout your career and that you can highlight as obviously being pretty influential in steering you or giving you the opportunity. And when you first came into Wattbike, you had Richard Baker, who was the outgoing CEO. In a lot of the press that I read, obviously he stayed on for a bit. Was that helpful to have him in the background to navigate to a degree?
Hugely helpful, because this was a step outside my sector expertise. I mean, I'd never worked in the gym and elite sport areas, the B2B side of the business. I'd worked in bike and retail, and lots of international business in the drinks business, marketing, but I didn't, I'd never sold into a gym operator around the world, and
Yeah.
which had a huge depth of experience. And also, it's a tough period to navigate, that during COVID
Quite
periods.
nice to have a backroom friend just to.
Sense check stuff. So,
Yeah.
it's always a bit clunky and awkward, because, you're kind of, you have to kind of, both parties, you got to suppress ego and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it was really helpful because, Piper's own experience wasn't in the B2B health and fitness side either. So, um, it, I need, to have that sounding board. I was lucky to have it for a period of time. Definitely helped.
No. It's interesting, isn't it? Like you said, there's always good people could see like you might a lot. Oh, get him out. We'll start with a new breast, but there's always something to learn from somebody, isn't there? That, like you say, probably saved you some painful mistakes in the early days.
Yeah, totally. And, that's when people care a lot about the business, they want to, kind of have, want to have an input into it. That makes complete sense. But no, it was, that was great. But there were a lot of people who'd been at Wattbike for a long time, who are still the core kind of people within the company. And I was lucky that Ian Wilson and, well, Dushan is still in the company. Original founders of the business are very much involved.
Yeah. To
Well,
keep
Ian
that passion.
was non-exec director, and Dushan's in the business. So I was very lucky. There was this well of kind of Wattbikers who've been through it from the very beginning, and they're still in the business. So I always tap into that, as well as our partners around the world.
It's just smart, isn't it? Smart operating. So look, rather quickly, we're coming towards the end of our time, Stephen, which I said we would because I've only got through about half of my questions. But it's always nice, just for you, I think, as a bit of your therapy session here, is that
Yes, thank you.
is that if you could have a bit of a reflection, it's quite interesting what you said earlier about understanding. Not many guests have understood exactly where they fit, and you seem to have found that because you're either out and out entrepreneur, or you're happy. A lot of people are then happy within the machine, so to speak, and the running of that. And you found this really interesting scaling up, maturing of the business from those states, from sort of chaos to control, in terms of things. But if you were talking to young Stephen as he'd left university, what advice would you give yourself? Do you think is there a piece now that you've done so you can basically I can tell it to my sons because they won't listen to me, so they might listen to you,
It's
Stephen.
funny. Two things I think that leap out. One, you can never have too many gap years. So
We've already got that, my boys.
yeah, I I went straight into working for Richard at UD in July, after leaving university in June. I did end up having another gap year at the end of kind of my adventure in Chile. but I'd one say make sure you see the world and have fun. Don't rush because you're going to have plenty of time to kind of do your job. And actually, you might make a contact or have an experience that helps you anyway. So I go, yeah, don't don't rush. You've got plenty of time, and kind of if you are traveling around the world, do a bit of work and meet people. Don't just
Yeah.
spend all your time in a youth hostel. And secondly, I go, you know, don't dismiss things which you don't necessarily understand too quickly, because I avoided going into the computer room at school and university like the plague. And I was kind of very dismissive of thinking about technology. And I think if when I talk to my kids now, who are 17 and 15, I'm trying to get them to anticipate what the world would look like. So I'm saying, understand AI, use AI,
Yeah.
make sure you're the conductor of that future kind of tool that everyone's going to be kind of embedded in their life. So I think, yeah, I should have probably learned how to use a computer a bit before I started work. I think that would have got me a bit further on the journey of
Interesting. So
yeah.
a lot of our listeners will be going, "What do you mean you didn't have computers when you started?" But we'll just skim over that bit.
University. I, I, I still remember sitting next to one of my best mates in a geography computer class where I'd panic if he wasn't sitting there because I wouldn't know how to get. It was harder, to be fair,
Oh
computers
yeah, yeah,
to do this DOS thing, but to get going. But I used to get into flat panic on
yeah.
how to use it. So I definitely I was slow off the mark in that area.
Brilliant. I love it. Well, I think you say that's good advice. I do. The first one especially. I agree with you because like our children, mine are similar age to yours, and they're going to be working a lot longer than we have to because they're
Yeah,
going to live a lot longer.
and
So
I understand all the cultures around the world. I mean,
yeah,
business is going to be global as ever, and
yeah,
it's all about relationships and connections, whatever the future technology brings. So I think if you're really good at understanding different cultures and around the world, you're going to have more opportunity, I think.
yeah. Because the one question I didn't get onto because I thought if you're too political was tariffs because obviously it's going to affect you. But that I've been working for 30 odd years now, and I've never known the world as connected and also impactful on what we might be doing up in in our jobs in Leeds and you down in the
Totally.
Midlands now, and you realise it is so connected that somebody has a sneeze over there and literally we're getting affected here. And to be able to understand that and even start to see it a bit earlier could give you a massive competitive advantage.
Totally. I agree.
We'll leave it on that. We haven't mentioned Donald Trump once, so well done.
Ah,
Ah,
yeah, no, we've done well.
thank you very much, Stephen. I've really enjoyed that.
No, likewise, Steve. Thanks for asking me. I mean, you said it. You get a good kind of therapy session for me.
I'll send
Go
you a
well.
bill. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Take care.